Hello, today I'm going to be running you through an example rehabilitation plan. So when I am making a rehabilitation plan, I have a case study, whether that's I've seen a dog or animal in person, it's been their initial appointment, their first physiotherapy session, or I've been talking to a vet and I've got a case study from clinical notes coming in. So what I would have, whether that's verbally or written down, I will have just a rough run through of the case. So you can read along with me through here. So Blue is a 6-year-old St. Bernard dog who takes part in search and rescue. It's always good to have some context to understand what level of work and exercise and intensity they are subject to. Some time ago, Blue had been trekking across a field and slipped in wet mud on his hind limb, so we know there was an accident. He fell over. At the time, we rested him for a few days, but recovered well to return to work, so we know he had minimal intervention and management. So, for the last month, so that was a while ago, Blue has been reluctant to jump in and out of the car, so this is him starting to show signs of avoiding behaviour because there could be some pain somewhere still. Changes in posture and struggling over uneven terrain. So now we've got multiple references to his decrease in functional capabilities. He kept working Blue until he became 2/5 lame and then took him to the vets. After examination, fibrotic myopathy. So that is our clinical diagnosis. Was diagnosed in the left gracilis muscle with a rough 3 by 3 centimeters large area. So the gracilis muscle is one of those inner thigh muscles on the dog. It's located at the insertion of the muscle, so lower down on their leg, and the vet opted for conservative management, so no surgery or veterinary treatment has been undergone, apart from some meloxicam and rest for 2 weeks, to then go see a veterinary physiotherapist after. So we always have to abide by what the vet has said due to the Veterinary Surgeons Act, and we follow what the vet said and then we can step in. So 2 weeks later, so remember this is at least 6-7 weeks post-injury now. Blue is cranioloading, so that means he's putting more weight on his forelimbs than he should be, and he's in a kyphotic stance. So he's quite hunched up, showing signs of pain, and his back is raised and overly flexed, and has decreased weight bearing for his left hind limb, so he's not wanting to fully weight bear on that limb due to the fibrotic myopathy and the pain that is causing. He is sound, which is good. Obviously the meloxicam and rest has been good for him, but has reduced hind limb and protraction bilaterally, so it means his leg does not want to move overly forwards or backwards within the sagittal plane, and there's severe restrictions in the left stifle extension. That's because the gracilis would attach onto there, and also hip extension bilaterally. So that means even though it's only in the left we have the original injury, now both legs are suffering from it. That's because his right hind limb would have been overloading and compensating for the original left hind injury. On palpation, he also has moderate fasciculations. That's also known as pain spasms in the muscle throughout the thoracolumbar region, so that's all of his back. You can easily feel the fibrotic tissue in the left gracilis, and the rest of the muscle is hypertonic, so the whole muscle has got increased muscle tone, along with 30% atrophy to the gluteals and 40% atrophy to the hamstrings. So the rest of the left hind limb is now wasting away muscle mass wise due to the underuse or disuse of the whole limb. And the right gracilis is also hypertonic and hypertrophied, as I said earlier, due to that compensation, that overuse of the right hind limb. So on presentation, we learn that Blue's owner has let him go back to off-lead exercise 30 minutes twice a day. That's what BID means, throwing the frisbee. So that's our case study. Now the first thing we've got to do is think about what are our aims for this case. So our aims are, firstly, reduce the size of the fibrotic tissue. Generally, you can get your main aim from what the vet has prescribed veterinary physiotherapy for, as it said was to break down fibrotic tissue area. Once we've done this, we want to then increase the weight bearing of the left hind limb to help stop those restrictions and reduce the compensations in the right hind limb and increase its functional capabilities again. By increasing weight bearing, we're going to subsequently be improving mobility of that left hind limb, and then over time, without needing to compensate anymore, those fasciculations and pain spasms in the back will reduce. And then again, over more time, whilst reducing all of these previous issues, we are then going to rebuild up muscle mass of that left hind limb, and then by evening out behind again, we're going to be reducing the tension of that muscle tone in the right hind limb. So now we've got to think about our specific aims. What specific exercises are we going to use to target each aim? So to reduce the size of fibrotic tissue, we're going to be using heat thermotherapy, such as a heat pack, or any other thermal equipment you may have. Another one is massage, specifically cross-fibre friction. This is a specific manual technique used to specifically target adhesed and fibrotic tissue areas to break down. And then we'll be going in with ultrasound, which is an electrotherapy using longitudinal sound waves to mechanically break up these fibrotic tissues. And then we're going to be stretching, so passively stretching the limbs which contain the fibrotic tissue to help lengthen and realign the fibres correctly. Obviously, some of these exercises are going to overlap. I'm just going to run through them to get a good understanding still. So to increase weight bearing of the left hind limb, obviously each one carries from the previous one. So we're going to be considering our previous exercises still for these new aims. So specifically for the weight bearing, we're going to be thinking about weight shifting. Now there's a few different types we can do. We can do lateral of the hind limb. So we're pushing a weight onto that left hind limb again, and craniocaudal to reduce that cranial loading and re-establish the weight bearing behind. And once, obviously, all these exercises start off as baseline level and minimal intensity, and then over the weeks, over rehabilitation program, we can build up to increase the intensity. An increased intensity would be used later, but would be, for example, what's the word I want? Raising. That's the word I want. Raising the forelimbs, because that would be putting more weight and focus on the hind limbs again. Improving mobility of the left hind, we have PROM, which stands for passive range of motion. This is when we will be moving the leg through the motions ourselves, so the dog's not having any active muscular input, but we can really target specific joints and tissues. And obviously later, once we progressed up into intensity, we've got passive stretches and active range of motion exercises such as pulse. Reducing fasciculations throughout the back, we can use a laser or heat or massage such as effleurage and compression techniques. Just ignore my spelling there. You get the gist. Again, building muscle mass of the hind limbs. Everything we've done or going to be doing so far is going to be doing this. So once again, those stretches, that active range of motion with the poles, the weight shifting, which we can obviously progress onto a wobble board or cushion later on. And then reducing tension of that right hand, again, heat, massage such as effleurage and compression. And overall, that's going to naturally do it itself when we're getting the left hind to re-establish its workload. And then another quick one before we get onto the actual plan is our management control. Our environmental changes and factors are very important to implement to have any chance of the whole program being a success in the rehabilitation. So just a couple notes I got written here. So I know he's not on specific rest anymore because the vet only said for 2 weeks, but we still want to be controlled. So we're going to allow free roam of the downstairs of the house, but not allowed upstairs, no jumping up on the furniture, in and out of the car, nothing like that. That's going to cause the fibrotic tissue to remain or even increase in size. And then all exercise walking is to be done on the lead, no off lead, no running around, again because of similar reasons to before. And then unfortunately no frisbees or ball playing. Anything like that is going to be putting increased pressure and strain on the tissues that we are trying to relieve. So that's just going to be working completely against the physiotherapy exercises. Instead, we're going to be swapping it out for sniff work and enrichment like that, like puzzle feeders. Because I know obviously otherwise our dogs are going to go a bit crazy after all that time of doing nothing. I understand it's a hard thing to balance, but long term we've got to think about the success and aims we want to achieve. So coming on to our actual plan here, we're just going to start off with a 4-week rehab plan that we will then reevaluate at the end of the 4 weeks to address any changes we want to make, but also every single week having a check-in, seeing how they're coping, does anything need to be altered slightly to make the exercises more accessible. So first of all, we're going to be thinking about our contras. What do we definitely not want to do at this point, at this early on? So we've got sit to stands. Sit to stands would just be too hard work for this dog right now. We know they're not wanting to weight bear evenly at all, so how can we expect them to sit and use those muscles, propulsion, control properly? We just can't. It's going to be too painful. There's no point. Obviously at these early stages, pose is a no. I know I commented on it earlier, but as I said, it would only be used later in the plan once we are certain they are capable of it. Exercises like weaves, once again, that's just going to be turning too tightly, putting too much pressure and weight bearing on each individual limb, which they just won't be able to cope with at this stage. And a caution at the moment is hydrotherapy, again just due to the fact you can't weight bear, and we don't want to be forcing weight bearing, which is what you would do in the water. So our first thing we always think about is walking. The walking is honestly such an important factor. So SLW means slow lead walking. This means a true 4-beat rhythmical gait. No running around, no frisbeeing. And is Fiona going to be able to do this? Yes, Fiona can do this. Obviously once the physio has shown them in their first session. Reps and time. How long are we going to be doing this for? We're going to be doing this for 10 minutes at a time, and we're going to be doing this bid. This means twice a day, and obviously each one is to be followed each day to make up our week. Then static weight shifting, as mentioned earlier, we're going to have lateral on the hind limbs and craniocaudal. Remember, each exercise is going to be demonstrated to the owner by the physio during the first session, and they can contact the physio whenever they need about how to do exercises, so the owner is never on their own, do not worry. So the owner, again, yes, the owner can do this once shown by the physio. Reps or time. So for weight shifting, we're just going to be talking about reps because there's no time, there's no hold to weight shifting. We're going to be doing 3 to 5 reps of each, so 3 to 5 lateral and then 3 to 5 cranial caudal. We always give a range just because some days your dog may be feeling a bit tired, maybe the heat, maybe other reasons, but they may just not be up to it at the same time. We don't want to force anything, so if they just do 3 a day, that's fine, but if the next day they're feeling more up to it, maybe do 5, that's great. And at the end of the week, if they've only done 3 each day, and then we're trying it on 5 next week, if they've done 5 each day, then we can maybe up it for the next week. So it's the exercise rehabilitation plans are always about adjustability, and that's why they're so individualized and created for the individual, is to ascertain that we are doing the best thing for them in the moment. And frequency, again, this can be done twice a day. Hydrotherapy, if we are going to do it, it's going to be underwater treadmill, and this will be a hydrotherapist doing this, not the owner. Obviously, because we've considered this as a caution, in real life you'd be able to see the dog physically moving. Obviously right now we're just doing a written case study, so it's hard to know for certain. But if we did think the dog was capable and in the water is able to do weight bearing and move without causing any other issues and falling over, then we could consider just 2 to 3 reps of 10 to 15 seconds with water. We would want a water just about. It's hard because we've got to think about where the water surface tension is going to be acting on, and also how much reduced weight bearing we're gaining from a water level, but also that obviously it's harder walking through the water because of the different cohesive forces compared to air. So we'd have to consider it. Again, we'd work it out in the moment, and this is for a hydrotherapist to say for certain, but we would want the water around about stifle level to achieve that 85% weight bearing still. And then frequency would literally be once a week. And then the heat pack would be applied to the thoracolumbar region of the back, where our fasciculations were present upon presentation. This can be done, yes, by the owner, after shown by the physio, because it literally will just be holding a heat pack on them and checking every few minutes for the temperature, and there's no burn issues. Reps and time of the heat pack, we would use it for 10 to 15 minutes, and we could use that either once a day, so SID, or BID twice a day, depending on the need. And now we'd be moving on to ultrasound. So I've already put in our settings here. So we would be using a 3 megahertz head, and depending on, we could, because it's acute, we could use a range of the different pulse ratios. We would want to deliver 0.5 watts of power per centimetre squared. Then depending on the ratios, we would get our time. Only the physio is able to do this, and again our time depends on our settings, but we'd do this either once or twice a week, depending on how often the physio can be in to see the dog. The laser, we'd use either whatever laser we have, either class 3 or class 4. We would want to be using a higher hertz for pain inhibition, and we would be, depending on the size of the dog and the thoracolumbar region, this is all rough estimates, it could be a size of 5 by 5 centimeters squared, and we would be wanting to deliver about 24 joules of energy per centimeter squared. And then we could work out the timings from those settings. Physio only, and again once or twice a week, depending on how many times the physio can actually come in and see the dog. And then massage, we're going to have effleurage and compression to the thoracolumbar region where our pain spasms were. This will be done, ignore that, by the physio only. This could last for 20 to 25 minutes, depending on how quickly the tissues release themselves, and again once or twice a week, depending on the physio availability and owner situation. And then cross-fiber friction is a specific massage technique we will use on the fibrotic myopathy within the gracilis in the leg. And my typing, as always, is terrible. Very sorry about that. Obviously, this is done by the physio only, and it's done 1 to 2 minutes per spot. And we've got a 3 by 3, so let's just say that is 18 minutes. And we'll just do 1, so we'll do 9 minutes total on the area. And again, this is done 1 to 2 times a week. And when the physio does these exercises, they do it in a specific order for the fibrotic myopathy. It's always heat first to warm it up, massage to start breaking it up, ultrasound gets in to do the deep level stuff, and then your stretching is going to be realigning. So stretching for the hind limbs, we've got protraction and retraction stretches, and forelimb retraction stretches as well. This will be done by the physio only and begin with. Later on the owner could do it depending on competence levels. And then reps, we'd have 1 to 2 reps each of 10 to 15 seconds. And again, as we work through the rehabilitation plan, we will increase frequency and intensity. And then again, 1 to 2 times a week. And then, yeah, just to consider that your hydro session, if he does it, would replace the walk for that day. So I've already filled in the next few weeks just to save time, but I'll run through with it with you anyway. So as you can see, the cautions for the second week decreased slightly because we've done an intense first week of rehab, so we don't need to be quite as worried anymore. We know their capabilities are going to be improving a bit. So still slowly walking, no frisbee still, but we are going to be building the time so they can have that mental stimulation, bless them, and also start increasing the fitness levels and capabilities. And then our weight shifting can go, as obviously always depending on how the dog copes, but say they cope with 5 well with first week, they can go up to 10 reps because weight shifting is quite a gentle exercise. The underwater treadmill, as long as they're coping well still, we can just increase the time and reps slightly. And then our heat back, again, so it's going to be using the same amount. Our ultrasound, we'd probably increase the intensity slightly. So now we know we've got in there, it's not caused any adverse reactions, we can start being a bit more intense with the treatment. The laser, once again, to the thoracolumbar region, always we'll keep this up until the circulations have disappeared. Massage again on the back and then in the fibrotic tissue, and then our stretches again, and we're adding those other stretches. So for this specific fibrotic myopathy, hind limb retraction is the most important one because that is going to target the gracilis, but we can do the other ones still to address all the other postural and stance changes. And then now we can be more confident that the dog's going to be alright, so the owner can be showed how to do it and complete this once a day to increase the benefits of the technique. And then from week 3 onwards, we can move our walks up to 3 times a day, so they're getting a total of 45 minutes. So that's getting closer to what he originally would have been doing with his activity levels with his job. So again, all the time we think about those aims, we've got to think about what job does the dog do, what does he need to get back to. And now we've increased the intensity of this weight shifting, and we're raising the forelimbs to increase the weight bearing on the hind limbs. So that's why we've kept the frequency the same, because we've increased the intensity and we don't want to increase both at the same time, because then if something went wrong, we wouldn't be exactly sure which caused what. Again, if they're coping well, we can just up the reps slightly in the water treadmill. And now we can start to include poles and sit to stands as long as the dog has no caution still and they are able to cope. Obviously, we'd only let the owner do this if we were certain the dog was alright, the owner was confident, and they've been shown by the physio that these can be done daily, because we want to really get that fibrotic tissue moving as much as possible, because we need to be quick with it, because otherwise we're just not going to get a reduction in size. Keeping all the same, our heat, our ultrasound, again slightly change the settings, laser keeping the same, and then massage hopefully won't be needing it as much anymore because it would have all been starting to have a good effect, so it's just not as bad there anymore. And then our stretches, again, we can start building up frequency now that they're comfortable doing it. And yes, then we move on to week 4, and for week 4 again, all the reps, times and frequencies would just be increasing slightly, and then we'd do a re-evaluation, see how the dog is, and go from there. I hope this has been interesting for you all to follow me through on how I would write a rehabilitation plan. These take a lot of time and a lot of thinking, which is why they are worth it. They do cost a bit of money, but with dedicated practice from the owner and the physio, it's more likely to achieve what we can, what we want to of our animal, and see success. So yes, any questions, please let me know down below. If you want to see something else, a certain video, let me know in the comments. If you want to get booked in or see how I could help your animal, feel free to message me or email me on mfvetphysio@gmail.com or visit my website at www.mfvetphysio.co.uk. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.